So today I want to bring my first video for a recap on the amazing reading so far this month that I've had taking part in Katie's Readathon. So Katie over at Books and Things, it's her 10-year anniversary on BookTube, and from the dates of the 6th of June to the 12th of June, Katie had a readathon called 10 Years of Books and Things. The challenge is to read one classic and to read one work of historical fiction, and I want to bring one of the 3 books I've actually read for Katie's readathon in this video. So it's a brand new author to me, and oh my goodness, I've loved reading her stuff. So we're talking about Mrs. Gaskell, or Elizabeth Gaskell. So I suppose this could possibly do both prompts. It's a classic, and Lois the Witch, which is the novella or the longer story in this book I read, is a work of historical fiction. It is a fantastic longer story. It's just under 100 pages, based on the Salem Witch Trials. So it's set around the witch trials, and I really loved it. But more than that, I went on an adventure with it, and I found scenes of the book that I'm going to show you, which honestly, it made me cry, my literary adventure. And if you've read Lois the Witch, or you're interested in reading Lois the Witch, then stay tuned, because I am going to take you to Lois's village that she talks about in this book, which is the gorgeous Warwickshire village of Barford. I spent a morning this week walking around Barford, finding out all its history and finding scenes and rooms from Lois the Witch, and I just had the most marvellous time walking around this incredible village. And it's not only walking in the footsteps of a literary character of Lois, but also in the footsteps of Elizabeth Gaskell herself, who went to school in Barford. I think she was there between 2 and 3 years. So it was just the most amazing morning, and I can't wait to show you. I'll précis of this book, and I'll try to do this without spoilers. So we have a newly orphaned Lois, whose father was a vicar in a village, in the village of Barford in this book. And finding herself newly orphaned and leaving their graves in the graveyard of Barford Church, she fulfills her mother's last wishes to go and find her only surviving family member, an uncle, across the Atlantic. So she goes on a voyage to find her uncle's house, who lives in Salem, just as all the witch trials are starting, and Lois gets caught up in the witch trials. Anybody interested in that part of history, this is a fantastic account. It is really good at showing how rumours can start and how rumours can run away with themselves like a rolling stone gathering moss, how rumours subtly build on rumours and rumours and rumours until nothing can stop them. It also portrays different reasons why women were accused of witchcraft. In this book we see aspects of jealousy behind the accusations, we see aspects of attention seeking behind the allegations, with the victims of witchcraft getting a lot of attention and support. We also see a fantastic depiction in this book of the idea of the foreigner or the outsider. There is across the Atlantic the native Indian, and the accusations and how easy it was to accuse native Indians. We see also Lois herself being treated as the outsider and the foreigner from a strange place. Lois also recounts a witch in the village of Barford before she left the village, and she introduces this old woman as nobody knew her. She lived in a mud hut. Nobody knew what she did. Nobody knew where she found her food. She was a foreigner. So that aspect of being othered, being from somewhere else, and the way that that could bring suspicion and cries of witchcraft really quickly down on your head. We also see elements in here of sort of madness and mental health. Her uncle's family, when she arrives with her uncle's family, there is Grace, the aunt, there is Prudence, there's Faith, there is also the cousin Manessai, who is going through some form of mental health crisis, some form of delusions. He imagines in dreams that he is being spoken to from the voice of God to marry Lois. He becomes absolutely obsessed with her. Her refusal to want to marry him is then seen almost as blasphemous, because she's denouncing the word that he's saying he was given in dreams. She's denying a prophetic word. So there is faith, there is religion, there is madness, there is mental health, all mixed up in accusations and finger pointing as well. And surprisingly, I think you can also see in this book where it's obvious where there is magic and spells and witchcraft coming into the mix, and it's never where the fingers are pointed. We see the opening scene when Lois first arrives at her uncle's house. She is welcomed into a glowing kitchen with the Indian helper Natty stirring at the pot and chanting and getting the cousins, the girls, to run and get her different ingredients. It is like an opening scene of witches around a cauldron. Even though it isn't a cauldron, it is a normal kitchen hearth with a pot boiling, but there is a hint of magic and witchcraft within that opening scene that is very much foreshadowing of what is to come. We also see her Aunt Grace, in order to keep her son's mental health condition hidden and secret and hidden away from the village, she makes him a sleeping potion. There are potions, there are spells in this book, but it isn't by the women who are initially accused of witchcraft. We see those traditions and those spells and those old potions as well being a part of normal life, but once it steps outside what is expected, or once it falls into the space of suspicious or othered, or being performed by a foreigner, or just stepping outside of what is expected, or butting up against religious views, the minute there is that opposition to accepted religious views, and ironically we see religious magic within this book as well. The Christian and the Puritan church of the time had its own magical beliefs and systems and rituals, especially when dealing with witches, that were way more witchy than what the finger pointing was accusing women of. There's a lot of irony in here, including the cousin Faith, who is very jealous of Lois, being called Faith. It's so ironic that her name is Faith, because she is the most faithless character in the book. So there is a lot of irony in here when you read it, looking out for that. I also really love in here how Elizabeth Gaskell kind of almost mocks the earlier time, like an earlier century, and their attitudes to witchcraft. More than once in this book, the narrator will say, because they believed this in those days, they actually thought this, and it's kind of very almost mocking that they would be so superstitious about witchcraft and believe it so easily. It was really interesting to see a Victorian viewpoint looking back on the era of the witch trials and what they would have thought. They were much less suspicious, according to the narrator in Lois the Witch, and they would not believe that anymore. So that was a really interesting historical aspect of this novel or novella. Also, what I loved in this book, we also see that idea of the fear of the forest and the magical forest as a setting creeping in to the edges of this book, just like in Maggie O'Farrell's Hamnet, where the forest is described as this place where magic happens or magical creatures could lure you in. There are aspects of that in this book too. There is a lovely scene right at the beginning of the book when Lois is travelling to her aunt's and uncle's house for the first time, and this dark green rich forest that surrounds them starts to almost encroach upon the road to almost touch the coach that she's travelling in. It feels like magic is reaching for her, and that's done through that setting of the forest, which I love to see in any books about witchcraft. There is also a part in the book where they say about how scared they are of the cattle escaping into the forest, and it talks of the consequent dangers of retrieving the cattle. Obviously, again, the forest was seen as something quite dangerous and quite otherworldly. Within that as well, you've got that concept of the foreigner as well, and how the Victorians viewed foreigners, because the native Indians in the forest who appear and are suspected to be living in there are feared as well. There is very much that element of anything unknown, anything different is to be feared and suspected, and the forest as a setting is as much that sort of foreign element where you can't quite see what's in there, you can't quite see round the trees, it's dark, it's gloomy, and it kind of matches that same essence as the foreigner or the native Indians in the book. It is all really interesting how that concept of something unknown is really a portal to suspicion in the book. Really interesting depiction. Now, it is just under 100 pages long, so it is a novella or a long story in here. I haven't read the other stories yet. I've just really been soaking in having read Lois the Witch. I really loved it. It kind of opens your eyes to the brutality and the horrors of the witch trials, and how once you were accused, there was really nothing you could do. There was no way out, and people just jumped on this ever increasing hysteria, which just would have been so appalling and horrendous. I am pretty certain that there is a character in here which I've read was in the actual Salem trials, so that's interesting as well. Need to look more into that, but for now I'm going to take us back across the Atlantic to the beautiful village of Barford, where this book opens with Lois sitting on a pier, having travelled across the Atlantic, and she remembers Barford, and she remembers where she came from. She remembers her mom and her dad. It is the most beautiful opening of the book, and she remembers the church, and I am going to take you to that very church right now. So, St. Peter's Church has been in Barford since the Saxon times. Originally a thatched wooden Saxon church, it was rebuilt about 1200, and there is a list of rectors going back as far as 1280. The existing tower that you see here with the flag on dates from the 1300s. It is the most incredible church. The tower even has cannonball shots in it dating back to the Civil War, and this is the very church where the character Lois remembers her father being the vicar. This is the place where she leaves to cross the Atlantic to Salem. So this graveyard, we are told in the book, is where she leaves her mother and father buried as the newly orphaned girl she is. We are told in the book that nevermore should Lois see father or mother on earth. They slept calm and still in Barford churchyard, careless of what became of their orphan child, as far as earthly manifestations of care or love went. And Clemence lay there too, bound down in her grassy bed by withes of the briar rose, which Lois had trained over these 3 precious graves before leaving England for ever. So her mother, Clemence the maid, and her father all left in this astonishing place. Buried alongside these fictional characters is the very real character of Joseph Arch, who was famous for founding the National Agricultural Workers Union in 1872. That monolith there is his grave. Said to be haunted, there have been regular and verified sightings of a man appearing by that grave, going to sit under these trees and then disappearing. So we've got fictional characters, we've got real life famous characters, and we've got ghosts in this graveyard. Now, while I was looking around the graveyard, a lovely lady came to open up the church, so I actually had the great honour of getting to look inside. I think you will agree with me that this church is stunning, and this is the church that Lois talks about right in the opening chapter of the book. As Lois imagines this church on page 2 of the book, we are told the old low grey church could hardly come before her vision without her seeing the old parsonage too, the cottage covered with Austrian roses and yellow jessamine, where she'd been born, sole child of parents already long past the prime of youth. She saw the path not 100 yards long from the parsonage to the vestry door, that path which her father trod daily, for the vestry was his study and the sanctum where he pored over the ponderous tomes of the fathers. And I spoke to the lady in the church about that extract from the book and the office in the vestry and the little path to the parsonage, and she said, "It exists, I'll unlock it, come and have a look." And she led me back up the church past the organ to the brown door that you see here. And this is where we are about to step directly into the book itself, because this is the very room. This is her father's office, the vestry spoken about in the book. Did the little path exist? I asked as well. Oh yes, down here. She opened the side door for me and showed me the old gate through to what would have been in Victorian times the old parsonage. This, the 100 yards path that is mentioned, through to what is now a hotel which is under construction work. She said for a long time, until the church couldn't afford to keep this house anymore, this was the old parsonage. I literally found the 100 yards path and the office that is mentioned. This is the path that she imagines her father walking hundreds of times as she's sitting by the Atlantic overseas. I literally found the opening of Lois the Witch. But why would Elizabeth Gaskell pick Barford Church? Well, I found that out talking to that lovely lady in the church. She told me that Elizabeth Gaskell lived for a number of years in Barford because she attended Miss Byerley's school in the early 1820s, which was a school in the huge house called Barford House, which I am now going in search of, and I smile, look at the name of some of the buildings. Cranford, if you know, you know. So, following directions, I am looking for a long wall, and here it is. This is the outer wall of Barford House, which was a school where Elizabeth Gaskell came to study for a number of years. So that walk up this street and up Church Street to Barford Church would have been really familiar to Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, Barford House is now privately owned, but I got a little sneak peek for us all from the edge of the gates. A really beautiful, imposing building where Elizabeth Gaskell came to school. I had no idea when I came to Barford that I was going to be seeking anything more than the church and scenes from the book, but here we are, Elizabeth Gaskell's very school. Evelyn Waugh was also a frequent visitor to this house, and it said that she wrote part of Decline and Fall here. It just seems amazing to me that these houses in the village, which would have once been things like old bakeries and shops, they would have been shops that Elizabeth Gaskell frequented. You've got the Joseph Arch Inn as well, named after, of course, the famous Joseph Arch, and cottages where he lived, all leading down to this incredible Barford Bridge, because of course this amazing village steeped in history and literature is on the banks of the beautiful River Avon. There was a bridge here dating from Anglo-Saxon times, but this brick-built bridge has been here since the 1700s, so it would definitely have been here in Elizabeth Gaskell's time in the village, and I can just imagine her coming down on her breaks from her studies with friends to spend time by the water. And I think this setting on the water is what also inspired another part of Lois the Witch. When she's in America, she's got caught up in the Salem Witch Trials, and she is remembering when a woman, an outsider to the village, gets accused and murdered for witchcraft. We are told that she is taken down to where the water pools. I think it might have been the old mill pool on the river, although I went searching for the mill and the mill has since been pulled down. But we are told that she is carried down as a child to see what's going on. And the maid held me up in her arms to see the sight above the shoulders of the people. This is, I think, the setting. These are pictures of the old mill, but I think Elizabeth Gaskell would have been inspired to write this. She says that she saw old Hannah in the water, her grey hair all streaming down her shoulders and her face bloody and black with stones and mud that they'd thrown at her, and her cat tied around her neck. I hid my face, but then she spotted, and old Hannah cries out, Parson's wench yonder in thy nurse's arms, thy dad hath never tried for to save me, and none shall we save thee when thou art brought up for a witch. This introduces a real aspect of prophecy about the book, and I think it really adds to the gothic feel of this novella. There is prophecy. There is real horror going on. It is a fantastic exploration as well in this novella of religious intolerance and the othering of people via religious intolerance. It is powerful and I really loved it. So all that was left for me on this amazing day exploring Barford, finding scenes from Lois the Witch and walking in the footsteps of Elizabeth Gaskell, was me to explore on this walk back to the church some of the older buildings in the village, all of which are on a local map, which is lovely. There is a trail of the village to walk. If you ever come here, go to the village shop, get a trail map. It's really fabulous. Around this corner at the back of the church are some of the oldest cottages. All of these cottages definitely would have been here in Elizabeth Gaskell's day. Just dream places to live on the back of the church which opens the novel of Lois the Witch. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that, going back in time all the way to a place in a novel of Elizabeth Gaskell where a real civil war came through here. And that reminds me, I've got one last thing to do with you guys. I still haven't found that cannonball hole on the side of the church. So let's walk back together and see if we can find where it is. I was told, look on the tower on the left hand side and you'll see an indentation with a cracked brick, and there it is, cannonballs from the Civil War. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.